No one at Blackwood Global ever spoke about the girl above a whisper, because Amelia Blackwood was not just the billionaire's daughter, she was the storm that left shattered schedules, trembling nannies, and a trail of resignation letters behind her. And on the morning Daniel Carter arrived for his first shift as a janitor, he had no idea that his mop bucket would roll straight into the center of a family war money couldn't fix, because Daniel wasn't supposed to exist in Amelia's world at all. He was a single father scraping by, working nights, raising a 6-year-old daughter named Lily who had learned too early that silence could be safer than noise, and that same quiet strength lived in Daniel too, the kind that grows when life has already taken everything flashy from you and left only responsibility behind. Amelia, meanwhile, had everything except peace, 12 years old and brilliant, sharp-tongued, emotionally guarded. Her mother gone since infancy, her father Victor Blackwood absent despite being everywhere at once, buying affection in penthouses and therapists and elite schools that expelled her not for lack of intelligence but for defiance, rage, and a refusal to be managed like an asset. So when she was temporarily placed in a private education wing inside Blackwood Global headquarters under the supervision of rotating staff, the building itself seemed to brace for impact. And Daniel felt it immediately, the tension humming through the marble halls as he pushed his cart past glass offices filled with people who earned more in a week than he did in a year. The first encounter was an accident, Amelia storming out of a classroom, fists clenched, eyes blazing, knocking over Daniel's bucket, water spilling across the floor like a boundary crossed, and the aides froze, ready to scold or restrain her, but Daniel just knelt and began wiping the mess without a word, not looking at her, not flinching, and something about that confused Amelia, because everyone else reacted to her like a problem to solve, a bomb to defuse, but this man just cleaned, humming softly, and when she snapped, "You're in my way," he replied gently, "Looks like I'm the one who made the mess," and kept wiping until the floor shone again, then said, "You can go if you want. Or you can help. Either way, it'll dry." And for the first time in months, Amelia didn't run or explode. She stood there, unsure, and then kicked the mop toward him and muttered, "You missed a spot," which made him smile, not the condescending kind, but the tired, honest one of a dad who had learned to read children who didn't know how to ask for kindness. Days passed, and Amelia began finding reasons to cross paths with Daniel, breaking rules just to see if he would lecture her like the others, but he never did. Instead asking about books she liked, or telling her stories about Lily and how she once glued the TV remote inside a cereal box to keep it safe, and slowly, impossibly, Amelia began talking, not about tantrums or grades, but about the pressure of being perfect, the loneliness of being untouchable, the anger of being loved from a distance, and Daniel listened the way only someone who had nothing to gain could. Without notes or diagnoses or hourly fees. When Victor Blackwood finally noticed the change, it was through numbers, fewer incident reports, no more destroyed classrooms, a sudden spike in Amelia's academic engagement, and he demanded answers, expecting some new expensive intervention, only to be told by a hesitant administrator that the only consistent variable was the janitor, a revelation that offended Victor's worldview so deeply he summoned Daniel to his office, a room designed to intimidate, glass walls overlooking a city Victor believed he owned, and Daniel stood there. In his uniform, hands steady, answering questions honestly, admitting he wasn't trained, wasn't qualified, and wasn't trying to fix anyone, just treating Amelia like a kid who needed to be seen. And when Victor scoffed, asking what gave him the right, Daniel surprised himself by saying, "Because I see my daughter in her, sir, not the money, not the anger, the part that's scared someone will leave if she stops fighting." And for a moment the billionaire had no reply, because that truth landed harder than any consultant's report. The real test came weeks later, when Amelia had a full breakdown during a board visit, screaming, throwing furniture, security moving in, and everyone waiting for Daniel to be escorted out of the building for overstepping. But instead he stepped forward calmly, sat on the floor, and said, "Amelia, Lily cries like this when she thinks she's invisible. Are you invisible right now?" And the room went silent as Amelia collapsed into sobs and walked into his open arms, clinging to him like a child finally allowed to be won. And in that moment Victor saw what his empire had failed to build, a bridge. And after that day, Daniel wasn't just a janitor, he became part of Amelia's routine, with clear boundaries but genuine trust, helping her channel anger into art, fear into questions, rebellion into self-respect. And when the inevitable media leak happened, headlines mocking the billionaire's daughter raised by a janitor, Victor expected backlash, but instead the public response was overwhelming support, because people recognized something real, something money couldn't stage, and Victor did something no one expected. He publicly thanked Daniel, not as an employee, but as a man who reminded him what fatherhood actually looked like. The impossible wasn't that Daniel handled Amelia when no one else could, it was that he did it without trying to control her, proving that presence can succeed where power fails. And in the final quiet scene, long after offices emptied, Daniel sat in the break room video calling Lily, telling her about his day, while Amelia did homework nearby, calm and focused, two worlds colliding not through wealth, but through care. And if this story moved you, if you believe real strength shows up in unexpected people and quiet moments, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because the next story might just remind you that sometimes the greatest change begins with someone who was never supposed to matter, until they did.